Hello and welcome. Today I wanted to share some time with you, and more precisely the experiences and tips that we have discovered and developed with my team to help you get faster to your goals in setting and achieving the goals you dream about for your non-profit. We share a passion for making things happen. We share the awareness that we have reached a critical turning point in our stay on the planet, and that unless things change very rapidly and profoundly, the outcome is likely to be extremely unpleasant. And we know this so well that we have both decided to transform this awareness into action in the form of a non-profit we run with a passion born from conviction, but often also with very limited resources. Today I want to change this for you as it is changing for us. Now you should see a new slide on your screen. It says, "Stop your non-profit being the best kept secret on the planet," because there is a hidden windfall, hidden in plain view, which will allow you to get into exponential growth. So, my name is Liane Montagne, and I live in a tiny village in the Pyrenees at the border with Spain. As you can see, we are bikers, and I actually very often run my business from the back of my motorbike in the top case, where I have my iPad and keep in contact with my clients and the causes I'm deeply committed to. For those of you who don't know me, and because I hate long-winded presentation, it takes time to sum up about 60 years when you've had a very full and totally out-of-the-box life. I have a short video telling you a bit more about me and why I am in the position to be able to share such nuggets with you today, for those who may have missed it before they get onto this presentation. To keep things simple, however, I run a successful international consulting company here in France and a training institute which is recognized by the French government. I also recently took over the running of a non-profit in the field of ecological transition. And today I want to share with you how we are applying what I learned and what I'm using daily in my business, along with a couple of remarkable little finds, to the running of the non-profit, and how this is entirely changing the scope of what we can achieve without creating more work, more headache, taking on huge teams, although we can afford to do so now. So here's my favorite back office. Is the slide updating your end? Give me some sort of affirmation so you can say yes, okay, yeah, all right, yes, thank you. Yes, thank you, Dina. Yeah, oh yes, you're in Barcelona, not very far. So we need to touch base and have a look. So yeah, this is my favorite back office. We're bikers in the family and we love visiting clients on the bike. This is a way for me to be close to people, to nature, real life, rather than being stuck behind the windows of a car that doesn't really work for me. On the back of the white bike, my Honda CBF 1000 is a top case where I have my iPad. And as I said, this is how I keep contact with everybody, especially since we've taken over to help develop this non-profit. We're a lot out and about looking at sites and visiting other non-profits and people invested in local projects. So if you're interested in hearing more about this side of what we do, you can put Liane Non-Profit in the chat box now, and my team will send you some details. But for now, though, I just wanted to share with you that I'm not talking from an academic viewpoint, but from boots on the ground, and I'm sharing similar drive and passion as you are. Because really, this is a time is dedicated to non-profit animators. You guys are putting your necks on the line. You struggle to get really good stuff out, but at most, other people are dreaming about it, but never going to do that. So for me, you're really the unsung, mostly unknown and worthy of the greatest helps heroes out there. But you also need an awful lot of help in order to make sure that your goals are being reached. So in the small amount of time that we have together, my goal is to make a big impact in your non-profit and the life of all of those in your ideal hard work and dedication in the following ways. All of this without babbling endlessly about the wonderful things that will happen if and when. But one thing is for sure, I want to give you confidence when there is uncertainty. Second, I want to give you clarity where there is confusion. And third, I want to unlock within you the true potential that you have to make your dent in the universe, whatever it is. It's ambitious, and yet it's totally feasible. Why? Because we're already passionate and sold to giving the best of ourselves for causes that matters to us. And getting some guidance on what actually works today for non-profit will give you the clarity you choose how you're going to most wisely and efficiently use your time and that of your small team. Finally, when you see how to do things you have always dreamt about but not know how to put into action, and you have a clear-cut path on what to do, when, and on top of it, you get the astonishing means to do it, so stick to the end because you are really going to be in for a big surprise, then the only limit of what you can achieve is really your imagination. This is exactly what we're going to achieve together today. And when you stay to the end, you will have access also to my cheat sheet of exactly how to apply all the things we're talking about in the same way as we are doing it here with our team. How does that sound to you? Good? Okay, so just give me a little chat response here. Okay, loads and loads of smart individuals here today. It's really nice. Now, this is what I'm going to do for you, by the way, but I need you to do something for me. You see, the deal is implementation is key. Nothing is more painful than when I do my absolute level best to take what's taken years of blood, sweat, and tears to figure out, and I hand you the solution over on a silver platter, yet years later, I run into you at an annual award ceremony, or I hear from you via activist on the net, and you still have the same problem 5 years from now than you have today. And I've already given you a solution, then it really makes no sense, right? So I don't want to see this happen. I want you to come today with an implementation mindset, not a passive learning, but an active learning mindset. Because there aren't enough gals and guys out there doing what you are doing every day. And nothing happens by just listening to stuff, okay? When it comes to really unlocking within you the true potential that you can unleash into the world, you got to realize that thoughts become things. If you see it in your mind, you will hold it in your hands, right? If you're lukewarm and full of hidden yes, buts, then obviously your results are going to be manifesting as yes, buts as well, right? Get this, nothing happens that you haven't imagined and given a form to, knowingly or otherwise. So as we go through the training here today, when I show you something, I'd like you to see it in your mind, and I want you to see for yourself how you're using it and in whatever specific context that it makes sense for you in your own nonprofit. So I'm going to give you my level best, right? But I'm asking you in return to give you level best as well. So do we have a deal? Does it sound good to you? Can we agree to that? Okay, thanks for putting little yeses in the chat box. Okay, I want you to feel this determination in your bones and veins in the same way as you pushed everything out of the way to first create the structure you want to explode in scope today. So just a little bit of background thoughts about how I came to putting this presentation together and what my thought process behind this is. It's a long time since I'm aware of how we're going pear-shaped on our one and only home. Actually, I have been involved in what we call ecological transition today since the 70s, so it doesn't date from yesterday. But these are some of the points that I realize are hampering our actions and are holding back the power of our enthusiasm and abilities. Okay, first of all, we have fragmented efforts, both nationally, but even more globally. We deal in similar fields, we deal in similar areas, and yet we don't communicate with each other, and therefore we don't have the leverage that we could have either nationally or internationally in order to make our actions even stronger. So that was one of my first thoughts. Secondly, it's a little bit more controversial, but I think you're already very aware of it. It's the use of resources which are made by NGO. Somehow there is a real issue behind keeping sponsors happy, and the negative feedback of conflict of interest when those sponsors happen to be the very people whose action the NGOs are trying to fight. So I'm not going to give an awful lot of examples because I think we all know what we are talking about here. But I just want to say that this is a reason why I believe smaller NGOs, smaller non-profits, have an incredible role to play on the ground today, and that's why, one of the reasons why I feel we should get together and do some work together. So I think there is also a lack of support, a lack of real training and on the ground resources, because to develop larger visions and implement them, we really need to have expert support, which is sometimes very much out of the way of our passion. We know what we are doing on the ground, but we're not marketers, or many of us aren't marketers. We don't have teams which are, and therefore we end up with a lack of regular influx in terms of money, in terms of resources, materials, whatever it is that we need, because we don't know how to go and get it. Okay, there is also a problem with communicating between folks who are working in similar areas, as I mentioned, So do you recognize well-known issues here that you're fighting on a daily basis? Okay, yeah, I can see that. So let's say lack of communication between folks who are working in similar areas, either topics or geographical, so you can literally piggyback on each other's activities and develop larger networks which are more powerful and wider ranging. Okay, I'd like to take as an example a non-profit in the field of flora and fauna preservation. Okay, one is working closely on implementing permaculture principle. Both these cases are really complementary, right? And they involve potential members of a similar geographical area, or they involve people who are trying to create a local solution that both procures, for example, local food supply, whilst restoring catastrophically depleted soils. We agree on that, right? We could even add a non-profit that promotes natural forms of healing using non-invasive medicines, like natural medicines, like plants or flora-based medicines, to treat the ills of people who in turns were fed, watered, and breathing dangerous and toxic cocktails of agricultural chemicals, not to mention glyphosate, of course, by name. So you can see that there are areas in which getting together and working together could have tremendous effect if we only knew how to do it, right? So in fact, we're dealing with a situation where, first of all, a lack of time to cooperate is due to a lack of resources, and the right people working with you all leads to a fragmentation of work. And we leave what could have become larger imprints on the table for local populations simply because we have not organized ourselves to do that. Same for the environment, or the creation of more global solutions in the form, for example, what if we could create blueprints that would help other non-profit in other parts of the world who are trying to do something similar to us? Okay, I don't even mention at this stage that we are the best kept secrets, okay, under the sun, okay? And too often we are overworked. We get a tremendous yearning to change a key feature going rotten somewhere, but you lack in what it takes: clarity, confidence, resources, to make it really take off, and with similar yearning. Therefore, what follows is exactly what will make change possible for all of us. We are not known, not at least by those who should totally benefit from our action. And we do not share information with other non-profits, whether in verticals or horizontal niches, as I said, to multiply the value of our action. There is up till now no real way to do that without calling out individual structures we happen to know, but no way to find out who is out there doing similar or perfectly complementary work. So we have created a platform, and please write in the chat box Leanne's platform, because we're creating a platform where we are independent from the big GAFAs, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple, naming but a few. And we could say GAFAM with Microsoft because they're all, working hand in hand. But we are creating a platform which will enable us to connect. So just write Leanne's platform and my team will send you some information that you can look at. So how to help you set up and run those larger goals, even if it is via connected with other large-minded non-profits. How will help you determine how to grow your footprint whilst remaining at ease with what you are doing at present, okay? It's not a matter of changing everything. It's a matter of using what we're already doing, what we're already expert in, what we're already passionate about, and really like squeezing the lemon to make sure that we get the maximum benefit for you from it. So I get it, some of you may not want to become huge, but certainly we all want to grow our impact so that the planet we're repeatedly disturbing guests of has a modicum chance to survive our follies. Would you like to see the tricks and method we and highly successful outfits use? And I'm sure you would. I know. Yep, I'm looking at the chat box right now. You guys are really fantastic. The answer is yes, and I'm going to show you that here today. So, for me, let's just take the example of a small nonprofit we're helping to change the impact of, just to demonstrate what a few tweaks can do to your overall results. I think you may fall in just about the same kind of size. They have about 3 to 4 people helping along, as staff. So they're not beginners, but they're not big either. And I feel this is, as I said, where we can do and where we can have the greater impact if we get our act together and use what works for people today. So here's a story. We're on Skype. Let's call him John to keep his, privacy. He's the coordinator for the Ivory Coast of a small nonprofit seeking to help in education, food production, and health in the country. So that's a big goal, right? The nonprofit is based in France, and it has already got a few members. They've done a lot of stuff. They wish to act, but their scope, what they want to achieve is enormous, right? There is really apparently unbridgeable gap between their aspiration and where they're at today, despite the fact that they already have some great achievements, stuff that they can show for in the years before. They have, for instance, managed the construction of schoolrooms, which makes a great difference in some villages, but they would really, really want to go much bigger. So I'm suggesting that using lateral thinking to highlight all of your skills is a good idea. How do we reconcile the fact that they have so few followers and financial resources, because at the moment they don't really have an awful lot of financial resources, and I know it rings a bell with a lot of us, and the fact that they want to impact millions of people in remote local areas? First of all, I sit with them to redefine exactly what they want to achieve, and this turns out to give a completely different narrative. There is this thing about give me something for Africa. It's blasé, everybody hears it, and there's nothing in the position which differentiates you from any other nonprofit or any other body out there that wants to help something or somebody. So it position yourself. If you revisit your branding, it will position yourself into a global trend, as we're going to see into a bit. Then we identify the elements which are needed to translate this redefined mission into a concrete set of actions, just like you do for a well-structured business plan, actually. So we are using common sense and established methods, and we're using them to make sure that we obtain the best results in our presentation. So what's the overall goal? How to redevelop it, not just from a central office think tank, but also from the ground, from the very people whose life you want to impact. And for this, I suggested that it could mean involving people on the ground, in the community you want to help, to ask them how they see their perceived needs. Because if they are using their own words, then you are going to be able to be so much more genuine, and you'll be able to also articulate what you want to do to the public that's going to be helping you in much better way. And how do you take those end goals and work with them in logical small steps needed to be implemented in the right order at the right time to achieve that big, clearly defined and expressed goal? What resources do you need to achieve them? Think human resources, but also, we need material on the ground, we need finances. And in which time does it all need to happen? Where do we get these resources from? Okay, these are all key for all this to really happen. And that's communication, the ability to spread your message to people that matter, when it matters, how it matters, and it can help you move the needle or remain stuck in neutral. So there is also, how do you craft your message? Because not only do you identify things and you put them into order, and you put them into order irrespective at the beginning of what existing resources you have, because that we can solve. I'm going to show this to you at the end. What's important is, what are the steps you need to follow, and how now do you craft your message? To whom are you going to send this message? How do you select and reach your different targets? Because there are different targets in the people we speak to, right? But we tend to tell the same story to donors, to sponsors, to volunteers, or to people and organizations that contributes material to XYZ, okay? So we have the same way to explain things, but these people are different. Each target has a different approach to our work, and lumping them together in a mass message will either not really ring the bell for them. How does this concern me? What is it for me? How do I feel good about doing this? How does it help me to identify and scratch my itch? I am not, insert here whatever of the above target the person is not of, that's hearing your message. And so by trying to be far-reaching, you end up being vague and connecting deeply with no one. So how do you deliver it? Once you've crafted your message and we are pretty clear about who it is to be delivered to, how do you deliver it? And how many responses do you need? How do you optimize your responses? How do you learn to be far more precise in the avatar of the various targets you want to reach, so that each effort you make get the maximum results with the minimum output? In other words, how do you define and maximize an ROI in your very specific campaigns? Okay, so we know that we are touching a lot of people, but not all those people are going to be the right targets for what we need in our nonprofit. There are people who are going to be just merely interested, and there are people who are going to be really the key members, the key staff, or the key donors of your nonprofit. So we need to be really, really clear who these people are. And usually the best way to do it is to look at our history, who in the past has fulfilled the best for our campaigns, and build the avatars around this. So you see, most of us nonprofit is that we have an overall idea, but we seldom spend the time to elicit all the nook and crannies which makes this vision come to life. And because we're non-profit, we're dependent on members joining our vision, our efforts, our resources to make it happen. Okay, because we seldom manage the resource side of our project as a priority, we fall into the rut of thinking, well, when I have XYZ, I will be able to implement this or that. And we need to move from when I have, I will, to I go and get what I need to execute now, which is a real mindset, as I was talking about at the beginning. We fundraise or seek volunteers. We employ and provide. We open and close or even abandon more ambitious projects, depending on the resources that happen to fall into our laps and how successful a campaign has been. But we must understand that we do not actively control a campaign in most cases. exactly because of the lack of resources. Hopeless and exhausting view from that angle, right? Okay, yet I think there are things we can do to learn from the conventional markets, as well as many things we've got to learn to stay away from, I agree. But there has to be a larger vision and make sure we know what we need to make it happen and where we are going to go and get these resources from. Let's be clear, the answer is not haphazard. So basically what we're doing with John's missions is to redefine how we conceive it, how we present it, how we are communicating with, for which part of the step, so people who can help and want to help feel really, really concerned and can but deliver a resounding yes to his request. And then, of course, we move on to how do we implement it. In the end, it will have the same effect as the components they were trying to put in place. In other words, they will get, results for education, for food productions, and so on and so forth, and health. But in fact, it will also be a much wider and more coherent in scope than they ever imagined, and happen in much shorter space of time than they ever thought possible. You and I both know this gut excitement we feel when we see a vision coming together and real actionable steps to realization, right? And what's even more exciting, because to make it all this possible, we have two hidden nuggets that change everything for nonprofit. One I mentioned earlier and is a vision plan revisited. More on that later, but I will also show you a trick hardly anybody knows, even though it's hidden in plain view, and even fewer really are able to take full advantage of, and it's going to make you fall off your chair. So sit tight, it's coming. Don't fall off your chair just yet. So, yes, I have also a John here who is laughing. Okay, so first of all, we are going to go back and look how best to craft our message. Who are you interacting with? What are the best way to deliver this? How do we define a target, specific categories of people we need to reach? How do we combine both an exciting overall vision and drill down to their required granular input? How do we make them feel the relevance of what they bring us for the recipient, your goal action? And just as importantly, how this will fill the gap in your participant mind. They want to feel the scratching of the itch. They want to feel satisfaction from getting involved with your nonprofit. So we need to find out what triggers this, okay? Actually, the more you niche down, the greater your result will get. Contrary to popular ideas, casting a wide net is an opportunity for disaster. In other words, for catching absolutely nothing. The message itself is issued from the overall message that you want to put and how we come to express it. The mission statement of your nonprofit needs to be so damn precise and yet open-armed to make people feel concerned. Yes, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to achieve. I want to contribute. I want to see happen. Okay, so the mission statement is a bucket, but the nugget you take out of the bucket is specifically expressed for each kind of resource you need and the people you identify as best target to bring it to you. Okay, so from the overall message, you get the goals that you break down into smaller chunks afterwards. So you niche down. I'm going to get this part of my needs to this kind of targets and that part of my needs to that part of a target. And you then combine with other non-profit goals, as we already mentioned earlier, but we'll see this also a little bit later, which gives you all the parties involved tremendous leverage you never would have on your own. So first of all, let's address how you craft your message and how you deliver it. I'm going to show you how to create more interested contributors in whichever area you are defining as essential in your plan, in the introduction of your delivery, that most people do in their entire pitch and entire campaign, because they cast a net so wide hoping to catch something in it. Okay, so let's assume we have reworked how to deliver your mission ideas, and as we did for John a few days ago. This is really a crucial step in the process of communicating what impact you are aiming for, and this again for each category of people you want help or contribution for. Actually, at the end of this time we spent together, if you think that I have held my part of the deal to open your eyes to how much more you can do with what you already have, I repeat, you don't have to go and get anything different because you already have it. So if you allow me, I want to make it clear that I will make you a specific offer. I will give you the opportunity to a really very few number of you to work one-on-one with me to craft this very message for the right people or the right purpose before learning how to deliver it. So hang in tight and listen carefully. Make notes because this will change your world and the scope of your existing efforts, whether you get to those spots, and I really don't have many and you'll see why. I mean, it's genuine, it's not a marketing trick, or you choose to apply what we're sharing here now by yourself. Okay, so I'm going to be going back to John, again in our example, to give you an insight into the problem. And that puts a ceiling on your potential success. And I'm going to show you a concept formula. So powerful, you're going to find it useful in all areas of your business, not just when you are making a presentations like I'm doing right now in your maybe a webinar, or you are live in front of an audience or something. So I'm going to show you during the pitch section a mistake that you are most likely committing that's actually robbing you blind. I'm going to give you a pitch formula that's so fill in the blanks, yet so profitable, just for fun, because we have this happen so often that people are starting to wonder if we are some kind of magicians or mind readers. And that's because we are thinking not from our shoes, but we're putting ourselves in the shoes of the people we are speaking with, okay? One thing we need to understand, however local and boot on the ground you are working, reaching the right amount of result means understanding that you need to learn to do two things, right? Realize the amount of success you have depends on the scope of your message. So, for instance, we need to be target specific, okay? That's what it means to be target specific for us non-profit. And we need to be in the position to deliver that message. Okay, so let me expand a little bit. Let me expand a little bit on this. We think we have limited resources, but actually we don't. We just need to be using those resources a little bit more craftily. How do you create in the person that you want something from the same release of adrenaline and endorphins? You know, these happiness hormones that you get when you're working on your project and missions? This is what we need to be doing. We need to be really kind of creating this to get the kind of commitment that matches yours and that of your existing team. I mean, you need people excited. You need people involved, engaged. You have to convey to people that you've never heard of you. They've never heard of you. They've never paid attention to your message. The same kind of feelings that you are experiencing. Okay, so how do you do that? Okay, it's not magic, but pretty logical and coherent in the step to follow. Donors and volunteers have slightly different mechanisms through which their happiness mechanisms are going to be triggered. Okay, let's take an example. Donors may be looking to create an impact on a cause where for some reason they cannot personally be physically involved, all right? Their feel-good factor comes from the act of giving financially or in some other kind, and your message to them should help them be comforted in the knowledge that their contribution is allowing someone to do what they wish they could do themselves, but they can't, okay? So that's for donors. Volunteers, on the other hand, need to feel that what they contribute to has a meaning beyond their individual scope of action. It's not like just adding a nice line of their CV or run away from some sticky situation back at home or a lack of direction in their life. Their experience contributes to the collective know-how of the structure, of the project, of the people, or the environment impacted. Their feel good moves from an individual scope, obviously listed to the sum of all your non-profit actions, via their wish to participate in the volunteer project of their choice. But they also become part of something bigger than themselves. And when you acknowledge this, it reinforces their determination. They give you 1,000%, just the same as you give your thing 1,000%. Okay, so it releases endorphins. Okay, larger donors, for example, if you go to companies, and most of us don't know how to do that, so we have something which we help you learn how to get to companies. So larger donors such as companies need to feel that they are not only XXX or greenwashing their image, for instance, but also making a difference in the life of the recipient. So that is 2 steps: greenwashing their image, and then they move on to making a difference in the life of their recipients, the people that you are helping or the environment that you are helping. Okay, but there is also a third step that we very seldom leverage, is that it can be worthwhile to recenter their own stuff around a goal they have chosen to sustain. And really, this is incredibly valuable if you can make this understood by companies, because they often struggle to have a company culture that makes sense and motivates their people, and that can be an incredibly good leverage for them and a win-win situations on all sides. In each country, there are specific environmental laws that are pushed forward and sometimes enacted, but the culture of a company can be very substantially positively impacting by regrouping around helping a specific project, not just giving out an old computer or an old printer. Again, I think you start seeing that, right? This is still very general, but when we work with individual nonprofits, when we work one-on-one with you, we help you to drill down into this mental approach, the mindset to trigger that, so that you get the maximum benefit from your action, and you also help those who are helping you to get the maximum benefit from from their help to you, right? So back to John and his issue of hitting the right audiences to help them reach their revamped mission. What were they actually trying to achieve as a big picture? And how could we convey how deep their mission was? What's the deep why of their mission? Okay, here I want you to stop, and I'm going to stop one of these common ideas that creep into people's mind at this stage. No, it's not a matter of shifting the mission, okay? It's not the matter of saying what you're doing is wrong and we want you to do something else. It's nothing to do with that. But it's a matter of clarifying how you are expressing what you want to achieve. And we help you find sharper ways to connect it with those who will support you. So think of not breaking things, but think of, on the contrary, reconnecting, bridging out, explaining. The problem we have today is we speak a lot, but we don't communicate well. Okay, this is something critical when you start going wider in an audience that is so-called cold. That is to say, is not familiar with your story yet. So you need to be clear and crisp whilst hitting the right emotional buttons that trigger their deepening of interest, and of course something they can do for you immediately. Okay, just think, people are not in our heads, and we think that because we know what we want to do automatically, and we say a few words about it, then people will know what we want to do. Well, I think we both know that it doesn't happen that way. Okay, so one last point, as we're mentioning advertising to new audiences, you need to have a real plan in place before you start talking. There is no greater waste than bringing someone in contact with your nonprofit, but not giving them a clear call to action. Not just one call to action, but really a series of calls of things that we'd like them to do and they would love to be helping us with. But this is built over time and segmented around the interest they are displaying towards your goals. Okay, so I think we're clear on that. If any questions, just stick them in the chat box, and I'm going to get back to them at the end of our chat. So now enters the number game. I know it's hardly the most exciting topic to think about, but certainly the one that shifts the needle for all of us, whether we are aware of it or not. And before some of you leave thinking, well, my impact is only limited to a small geographical area with a limited possible amount of target, well, think again. Because this way of thinking will unnecessarily curtail all the good you can do and you are already doing, just because no one perhaps ever told you to look at it a bit differently. So just stick with us and let's see. So today I'm going to mention this specifically for you. We all know the planet is in dire shape, right? The environment is systematically plundered, polluted, destroyed, and we're in the midst of the 6th known mass extinction of flora and fauna combined. The level of public awareness for what's going on is not even reaching the level of a daisy flower in a meadow at the foothills of the Himalayas. So there is a huge disconnect, right? There is something tremendous going on, but people are sleeping. And so how do we wake them up? So local is the answer to global. And it just happened that it's exactly where you are active and where you can really, really change the needle. So, small ants make big mountains, okay? We'd agree that if you keep things the way they are, there is little more impact you can have. Although, well, again, let's think of something. I'd like to have a little thought. Example alone triggers vocations and callings. Just by watching what you're doing at a local level, there is a passerby that can suddenly realize that they too can be creating a solution for their neck of the woods. Then they unconsciously translate your action into solving their issues. And you might even never know about it because they're not going to come and knock at your door and say, oh, by the way, you gave me the idea of the century. But, every one of our action has repercussions. And when this happens, do you really want them to go through all the growing pains and havoc you went through to put something in place like you have today? I don't think so. Or do you think that if you can share with them how you got going, what specific obstacles you met, and how you solve all this, it could help them tremendously. And thus, when I'm saying it X's your potential of leverage and action, this is one of the examples, okay? So let me give you a tiny example of this. Here, as I said earlier, I live in a tiny mountain village where not so long ago, people got their water from running streams. Amazing. The water was naturally filtered through the mountains and drunk by generations and generations of us, human and animals alike. Then came intensive farming with antibiotics and medicines force-fed to cattle, which then started to pollute the streams, right? So people decided to capture the streams and filter them with more chemicals. So the poisoning loop got installed permanently. Then more cattle needed more fodder. So our streams and rivers were captured into artificial lakes and dams. And while farmers were complaining that they could no longer find suitable markets for the growing beef cheptel. Right. So we started to exchange contaminated cattle from one continent to the other, while all the while weakening the local farmers and poisoning all the populations and polluting everything in the process through moving this cattle from one continent to the next. So today there is a David versus Goliath fight, which is looming in our small neck of the woods. There is what you're seeing is actually a real tiny river, which is called the Tweer, and is not very far from us. It's probably about 20 miles from where we live. And there is a David versus Goliath fight looming in our small neck of the woods. Agribusiness wants to capture the water of this little local river. Actually, it doesn't have that much flow to force feed into an already existing artificial lake, whose water will be captured to irrigate massive cereal fields grown in intensive agriculture with faraminous amount of glyphosate and other fertilizer to feed cattle that we will need to export because we can't sell them here, okay? We need to export them where? To China, because beef produced in Canada is invaded the local markets and the collapsing the price of the old-fashioned locally produced cattle. Okay, did you follow this? Well, this is a kind of madness we have, and I'm sure most of you are aware of it. So yes, we could all become vegetarian, but in the meantime, there is this problem and we need to deal with it. So we need to find a dumping point for the locally produced cattle. If you think this is totally crazy situation, join the club. So do I. So how sick can we be? And how irresponsible for short-term profit can this become? Anyhow, there is this small non-profit which has just come about, which is trying to stop the redirection of this local stream, the River Tweer, to this artificial lake, which is crucial to get all this nonsense loop to stop, right? They may consider their action as hyper-local. You know, we were talking about you think you're local and you think you don't matter, but actually, let's just look at it. You know. Truth be told, on the surface, it is the population which is totally unaware of how this is going to affect their own water supply, because it is, and local environment, because it's going to remove the wetlands that we have in the area. So you can think that their main action is to protect their environment and local population. But there are other ways to look at this. Other ways which make gargantuan difference to the impact even the smallest of our structures can have on the planet and the way we interact with it. The story and fight of the Tweer River in the Ariège region of France is but one of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, similar stories around the country, around Europe, around the Americas. Let's not talk about Asia or Australia. Okay, it's a story of our collective human, criminal, and self-destructive activity, which is literally wiping the ecosystem off the map and creating momentous desertification areas across the globe. It has all the ingredients of modern criminal activities: stupidities, short-sightedness, greed, total incomprehension of how we are embedded in the planet ecosystems, and delivers an endless suite of catastrophes that others, like us, are trying to find solutions for. Death of soils, poverty, lack of food, misery, etc., etc. So, what if, instead of thinking of the extreme small localization, we turn towards the extreme wide topic of preserving streams and rivers that could give access to template on how to rapidly set up emergency measures, actions on the ground, lead advice, mobilization of all the population actually concerned by what seems to be a local issues. Many more structures made easier to set up and manage thanks, for example, those little templates that I'm talking about, which are born from our various experiences in different parts of the world in very local area, could spring up earlier in the arising of those nonsensical projects, and we could combine our expertise to enrich the common pool. So instead of having the view of a small local situation, we understand that this situation is repeating itself, and we need to get together and communicate. Remember, when I mentioned using leverage that are seldom considered in our action because, well, first we lack resources, and we also lack the opportunity to gather in like-minded and rich pool of experiences and solutions that can rapidly made available and tailored to specific local needs, so that an increasing awareness can be triggered by the action of the non-profits. Okay, so I mentioned this already, but what would happen if we decided we'd create our own ways to communicate without relying on censoring platforms such as I mentioned, the big GAFAMs? In fact, I've been thinking about this for a long time. You know, how do we communicate between us effectively? How do we educate the general public on both issues and alternative solutions? All this, whilst the noose of censorship, which we know is getting tighter around sensitive so-called fake news subjects. And what I have come up with is I will also share, which is our platform, and I mention it for the second time because I'm trying to enable you to see how we got to this idea of creating the platform to answer very specific questions that we are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Okay, but this is but one start of an example, all right? So, yes, Sylvia. Yeah, please put Liam platform in the chat box and we'll send you some details about it. Okay, let me get back to this. it can be used to see how you create a basic surveillance action on threatened areas, okay? Then move to blocking actions in the early stages and mobilize not just the immediate local population, but larger ones. And then you end up actually impacted by this globally, by this minute local story, okay? Let me give you the example of where this leads, and that's why I chose this example, not just because it was local to me, but it was really kind of eye-opening, and I'm sure every one of us has got that kind of experience, okay? This particular one, for instance, has revealed the cunning and idiotic short-sighted profit-grabbing move from the French government to deregister smaller streams so they don't have any more names. We remove the names of the smaller streams from the maps, okay? Why? Because they can be then captured for irrigation and they're no longer protected by ancient bylaws on registered streams, for instance. Okay, so what's happening is on the maps, the French government is removing the name of those little streams and rivers. So that means they don't have a name, so they don't exist. If they don't exist, they can't be protected, so they can be captured to do whatever they want, okay? Right, I'll let you think about this. So, along with non-profit, we could also consider involving the general public, who is ultimately the one we're working with and for to protect through our actions and raise their level of awareness in all manners of issues via this little local example that I've taken, for example. Okay, so back to our local River Tweer issue. Who would have thought that this hypothetical issue would reveal nationwide and actually worldwide trends as well, right? Hardly anyone, except locals still vaguely awake, and a non-profit action could really, with the right counseling and resources, move up to uncover national and even international environmental scandals, whilst informing larger sections of the general population of the real impact those seemingly tiny local actions absolutely have on all our daily lives, okay? If it had, as we were musing a few seconds ago, a simple platform to communicate, it could be known, and similar cases could be brought together for better understanding and better impact and better resistance, because there's a strength in number, not just for action, but also for data analysis. Okay, this is one of the reasons why I think that communication should be at the top of priority. Not just blanket for communication, but in-depth, segmented, targeted communication that raises the awareness and therefore, of course, your impact. And this does not need to cost you anything. If you'll follow me a little more, I will show you how this can be done with gobsmacking impact and momentous response, however small we are. Please keep this in mind, because if you're still telling yourself, great Jan, but we're not a big structure and we can't afford to just add money at everything we do, that could sound true, but in fact it's not, and I will tell you why shortly. But just for now, let's concentrate on what we need to do to get our message across, okay? To get our message across, we must first conceive our campaigns, so goals are separated step by step and targeted to the people known to be the most interested. Like ordinary business, we need to understand and master those basics to be efficient in our results and hit our targets. And if you allow me, I will make you an offer at the end of this presentation, as I said, so you can learn how to check and improve your data and thus reach your result quicker and most safely. So let's pursue this train of thought. Let's talk numbers. If you say you need to tell 1,000 really well-targeted people about your offer and take 10 actions in response, that's not an abnormal result. How on earth are you going to reach 2,000 people if that's what you're aiming for say, a new membership targets? Where would you find such a pool of such people? Okay. Well, how are you going to communicate with them, which is the next step? At a stretch, you can speak to a few hundred at a time in a local meeting room, but 200,000? Not going to happen one-on-one. Okay. If you decide to advertise, what faraminous budgets do you need to create those campaigns? And how do you ensure that they don't end up down the drain because you miss your targets and therefore your result despite the money already spent. Okay, there is something about converting a new cold prospect to the action taker you want them to be. There's a cost in marketing jargon. It's called the client cost acquisition. Okay, I don't want to give you nasty goose pimples, but in the business, the cost of acquisition in high value niches, for example, people want to advertise to doctors or to chiropractors or whatever, or to people who are selling houses, or that can be $300 or $400 per lead. Okay, and a lead is not even a person that takes action, it's a person that you show your message to. All right, so I don't want to frighten you, but this can be incredibly expensive, and I'm sure you already know about that. So making your nonprofit known has both exciting opportunities and mind-boggling challenges. A bit like going for the Dakar when you've just taken your motorbike driving test. Unless you have an expert team at your side, no amount of enthusiasm is going to come and fill the gaps of experience. Even when we have managed to scale up to a few people on the payroll, okay, few of us have dedicated, highly knowledgeable marketing experts that spend their time to keep up with up-to-date trends, because unfortunately it's not because you knew what was happening last week that you know what's working today. Okay, there are rules, there are potholes in the advertising world that actually sucks big company out of the existence. Okay, so let's not get to the fabulous budget many of these advertising campaigns as defined in your newly restated mission will require. I get this. Mostly, we must do fundraising campaigns to do fundraising campaigns so we can do more fundraising campaign. You get the drift. Snakes that bites its own tail. Just keep in mind, though, another useful point. It's not the amount of money that you spend, okay, that is important. What is important is what you get out of your investment. Example, if you spend $250, sounds a lot of money, to reach a sponsor, that sounds a lot of money, but that sponsor is going to engage with you to the tune of $20,000, then you're a genius. Spend $250 every day of the week, every minute of the day. You're going to be, you're geniuses, you've cracked the code. But if you spend $5 to engage someone that's going to contribute on a one-off basis $3 to a campaign, you got a potential lethal hose in your system. You got a hole in your bucket. So think in broad terms and have longer visions with more focus. But do not despair nor fall back in the usual, well, we'll do it when we can, bit by bit, blah, 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 because there are solutions, and this is precisely where I'm taking you now, step by step. Okay, so there is where our experience as a consulting company can really benefit you. Okay, I suggest you actually write the content on that slide down, or you take a screenshot, because there is a scale that if you're able to understand it and even more to master the data, your own data behind each step, it will totally change the results you're getting in your search, in your campaigns, in your goals, and finally in what you can achieve. Okay, so the first step to reach are views. Okay, views is getting eyeballs on whatever your message is. It's a condition sine qua non of anything else happening. Remember the best kept secret? If nobody knows what you're doing, you don't have any views, and so nothing happens. Okay, breaking it all starts with getting more eyeballs on what you're doing, right? In marketing terms, it's called views, and you must not make the rookie mistakes of believing that if people have seen your call, they will automatically be sold on it and do something about it, because they need to do the next thing, which is to click, okay? They can, if they don't click, if they only view that you have a message, but they don't click to listen or to read what you have to say, then nothing else is going to happen. So we already can see that there are going to be fewer clicks than views, because people may view something, but they haven't got the time, they haven't got the interest, it's not the right time, blah, blah, blah. So you have fewer clicks than views, right? The next thing is to engage. All right, meaning that they resonate with your message, not only because they're interested in general, but because of the very specific way you crafted your message. Remember what we said earlier? All this leads to engaging the person that never knew about you, that that see what you're doing. They click because you have hit an emotional target with them, and they are starting to say, yeah, that's what I'm interested in. Okay, they are engaging. Okay, and finally, the last mistake that we make, the huge mistake, and even big companies make, okay, is to believe that if people are interested in your subject and the way we deal with it, they're automatically going to know what to do to help us, right? The very big mistake that costs millions of dollars and efforts wasted. No, at the end of your message, you need to have a very specific, totally related and congruent call to action. For example, if your message is about volunteering in a project in a specific area, don't ask people at the end to suddenly give money to get that project going, because that's not why they carried on listening to you. They were listening to you because something about volunteering was making sense for them. So if you start with a message about volunteering, finish with a call to action. Go volunteer here now. Okay, and then everything is congruent and you get a lot of very positive, great result. Your message is centered around the psychology of volunteers. And so the call to action has to come and sign up to volunteer for that particular project. Okay, you get this? You get the logical trend here? Tell me in the chat box. Yep, okay. Even worse is when you have brought people to get all excited and you don't tell them anything about what to do next, okay? The number of people who say, well, we're doing this wonderful thing, and we need volunteers, etc., but don't give a phone number, don't have an address, don't have a way to contact you, don't have a button to share, money if that's what you're asking for or something like this, is absolutely amazing, okay? So just there is a sequence of actions that need to be taken. It's not rocket science, but if you forget one, you're going to stick your money into a bucket with a big hole in it. So any campaign has to be goal unique and specific. Don't lump everything together, hoping you'll have a larger covering. Do you remember this slide that I showed you about about the net? Okay, right. So let's recap where we got to. We need to be specific in our overall plan. We need to break it down into steps that we can drill down to the exact perfect avatar that we're aiming at. What's your target description? Okay, we need to know how to communicate what this target will get from picking up our offer. Okay, so we are talking to each kind of people that are going to be helping you in the way in which makes sense for them. You understand how to reach the right number of people by knowing our data. So how many people take action who have engaged with us because they have clicked and because they have viewed, all right? And this is how to create advertising which somehow we can afford and have a realistic ROI to make us invest in it. So this is really what I was talking about. The more you niche down, the greater the result you get, because casting a wide net is a recipe for disaster. Before we address what's in everybody's mind, cost issue, there is another big stumbling block that you can see appearing on your screen. Now, what we need to address is how on earth do we communicate with that amount of required initial people? Just remember how frustratingly difficult it can be to fill a room, let's say even 50 people or so. But when you know all people showing up are not going to take you up on the project, it becomes huge numbers. You need other means to handle in order to get the right people to get the number of actions you need, right? Well, to reach large numbers, there is a simple way. Just like I'm doing right now, I'm both going places to meet people face to face, remember my bike, but I also cast a wider net, albeit with very specific parameters, so that I can reach people a few minutes ago didn't know even existed. Tell me, how did you end up on this call? Somewhere you saw an advert, you got an email, you read an article, somebody told you about us, somebody told you about this presentation today. And now you're with me here, discovering, taking notes, bubbling with ideas to implement in your nonprofit. So the way to create such a meeting is neither mysterious nor unreachable if you are taught how, and in fact, more specifically, what not to do. In fact, you're taking part right now in the simplest way to do so, sharing a message with people online, right? There is a conception part of it. So we saw that in the crafting of what exactly you need to communicate to whom, at which point in your point, and to how many initial targets, okay? Then there is a planning of it. How do you add the narrative around your message physically to make it appear in text? Okay, this, what you see on the screen right now, is not appearing by magic. I have done something, my team has done something, so you can read, the slide as I am developing the subject with you, right? We tend to forget whether it is video or audio, it needs to be engaging, exciting, and actually really relevant to our audience, right? We tend to forget, and I think I mentioned this before, that people don't live in our heads. No, they don't either have the breadth of understanding of our topics as we do. I mean, when I started to talk about numbers, I'm sure a lot of you, it was a discovery. I mean, you have an idea, but it's not your subject. So we blurb on without being acutely aware that what our audience actually knows about our subject. And you can have a very enthusiastic neophyte, but if they don't understand what you're saying, then it ain't going to work, okay? Which brings us to tailoring the message to specific audiences. Okay, we saw earlier you don't quite speak to big donors as you do to volunteers, yet they're all going to strive with you to achieve a common mission at a particular step of that mission. I think it's becoming obvious that someone somewhere is to have to show you and your team initially, at least, how to take the best advantage of being able to reach large audiences. All right. Then there is a technical part of it. How are you going to create the support that encapsulate that message? Who is going to deliver the message? What tool do you use to do so? Here I'm using one of the currently most powerful means to speak to large audiences, to large amount of people with a minimal amount of effort. I have thought through all the previously aforementioned steps, and now I'm speaking directly with you on what's called a webinar. Okay, they are tools my team and I had to learn to master to do so. And even though we're not unskilled at it, there are times where tech does what tech does best, which is to say, screw up when you're spending so long putting together with so much care. Let's just hope, cross our fingers, that this is not going to be the case today, okay? But it happens. So we have fallbacks. We have recordings that we make that safeguard the message. It makes it available for anyone suitable to listen to it. We call them evergreens, and perhaps you may even be listening to a recording of something I made live in an earlier group, okay? So what are the pros and the cons of this? Well, the cons are obvious. If you are used to having your correspondent in flesh and blood in front of you, you may cringe at using a remote way to communicate. But the pros are not bad either. First, it resolves my and your ability to speak to very large audiences in one go. I mean, I have webinars where I speak to literally thousands of people because of all the targeting work that has already happened. And those here, like you today, are already prepped and eager to listen. Remember what we said earlier? The more targeted your specific audience, the better the results you are going to get for your campaigns. So the more you run events, whether live or later on recorded, the more you can analyze which audience respond best to your different offers, where you lose them, and how you can fix the comprehension, interest, engagement gap. Because if people are dropping at a specific time, you know that something has, stopped engaging them. So you analyze what it is and you go and fix it. Okay, I love this because I'm not bothering those who aren't interested in what I'm sharing. And I can continuously clone myself to enlarge my field of action without deploying more efforts than the original putting the campaign and its message together. Plus, well, as I said, I can fix a part which were not the best understood. They were not the best received or the best followed. because I was talking in my head, not, kind of talking with you, making it always available and more relevant. That's more efficient for the audience and the result you're aiming for. Imagine a cookie that would regenerate itself again and again after you've eaten it, and that keeps feeding the hungry masses. Well, yeah, okay, I know you've heard this before. So how sweet is that? So yeah, there is a learning curve. And this is also why, as long as we've said, you think I've held my side of the deal to deliver immediately applicable nuggets for you and your team, I will also suggest a way you can execute all this with your support and help, with our support and help. So now let's recap. You may have tweaked your overall message. You've crafted specific messages for specific targets to respond to your well-identified needs in the current order at the right time. You've moved from the limitations I mentioned earlier, this self-limitation we impose on ourselves, our mindset, on what you can do because of whatever perceived lack of means, concept is getting pulverized in your mind right now. You're starting to see that if you had a means to get to know others who are working either locally or in similar or complementary fields from yours, you could leverage your already extraordinary impact to network with vertically or horizontally compatible other nonprofits to reach greater, bolder, more global goals easily. All we need at this stage now is a way to communicate and know about each other's presence, right? But we have got you covered here too. And we need to learn how to create campaigns using state-of-the-art, up-to-date marketing to make this happen. Okay? So, yeah, what about the cost? Well, this is covered too in a way that I was not even aware myself a while back, and this is totally changing our world, and I can promise you it's going to totally change yours too. Not only your world, but the world you can and will impact using this lever. So at this stage, do we have any questions? Okay, I'm kind of waiting to see, and I have somebody who is picking them up, so we can make sure that we answer them. So don't worry, we'll be talking costs, but before that, where you are actually going to fall off your seats and before you risk injuring yourself in excitement, I want you to be aware of a few more things. Can you see how much more can be reached with similar effects, with similar level of efforts you're already investing in your team and without giving everyone a headache? Then there is a tech part of it. How are we going to create the supports that encapsulate that message? Who is going to deliver that message? What tools do you use to do so? Here, I'm using one of the most powerful means to speak to a large amount of people with a minimum amount of efforts. I have thought through all the previously aforementioned steps, and now I'm directly speaking with you on what is called a webinar. But you do the same in a live presentations, you follow the same ideas. The only difference is that in a webinar, you actually can speak to people that you've never met before, but who are still incredibly interested in what you have to say. So there are a lot of tools that my team and I had to learn to master to do so. And even though we are not unskilled at it, there are times where tech does what tech does best. In other words, screw what you spend so long putting together with so much care. Anyway, I hope that this won't be the case today, but this can happen. So we have fallbacks. We have recordings that we can make that safeguard the message and makes it available for anyone suitable to listen to it. Actually, we call them evergreens, and perhaps you might even be listening to a recording of something that I've made live at an earlier group. So what are the pros and cons of this? Well, the cons are obvious. If you are used to having your correspondent in flesh and blood in front of you, you may cringe at the idea of using a remote way to communicate. But the pros are not bad either. First, it resolved my and your ability to speak to very large audiences in one go, because all the targeting work has already happened, and those here, like you today, are already prepped and eager to listen. Remember what we said earlier? The more targeted your specific audience, the better the result you are going to get for your campaigns. So the more you run events, whether live or later on recorded, the more you can analyze which audience respond best to your different offers, where you lose them, and how you can fix the comprehension or the interest engagement gap. What does it mean? It means that at some stage, if you have good data, you will see that people, for example, drop at 15 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour or whatever. But you see those patterns emerging. So you go back and have a look at what you were saying at that time and how you were saying it. And very often, just the fact of looking at it, you will see, oh, no, actually, yeah, I'm quite understanding why people were dropping at that stage. And you can go and fix it. So the result is that the next time, the next iteration of your presentation is much better for the people who are listening to it, okay? So that is the first very, very great interest about being able to fix this engagement gap. I particularly love this because I'm not bothering those who aren't interested in what I'm sharing. And I can continuously clone myself to enlarge my field of action without deploying more efforts than the original putting the campaign and its message together. And my team is actually not being asked to do more, and so is getting not a greater amount of work for greater results. Okay, I can fix the parts. Plus, I can fix the parts which were not the best understood, they were not the best received, or they were not the best followed. And it makes it always better and more relevant. That's why I'm more efficient for the audience and the result you're aiming for. I like to think, if I can give you an image, I like to think of it as a cookie that would regenerate itself and get back on the plate even though you've eaten it. So it's a little bit like a story we all know. So how sweet is that? So yeah, of course there is a learning curve, but this is also why, as long as we said you think I've held my side of the deal to deliver immediately applicable nuggets for you and your team, I will suggest a way you can execute all this with our support and help. So let's recap. You may have tweaked your overall message. You have crafted specific messages for specific targets to respond to your well-identified needs, and that you've done in the current order at the right time. You have moved also from the limitations I mentioned earlier. You know, these things that I was talking about, the self-limitations on what you can do because, and what you can't do because of whatever perceived lack of means. This concept is getting blown out of your mind right now. You are starting to see that if you had a means to get to know others who are working either locally or in similar or complementary fields from yours, you could leverage your already extraordinary impact to network with vertically or horizontally compatible other nonprofits to reach greater, bolder, more global goals easily. So all you need at this stage is a way to communicate and know about each other's presence, right? But we have got that covered too. And we need to learn how to create campaigns using state-of-the-art, up-to-date marketing to make this happen. Okay, yeah. What about cost? Yeah, I see this coming again and again in the chat box. Well, as I said to you, this is covered too. In a way, I think even we were not aware of a little while back. And this has totally changed our world, as this will change yours. But I would say even not only your world, but the world you can and will impact using this lever. So at this stage, do we have any questions? Please put them in the chat box. My team will respond to them, or I will pick them up at the end of the call. Okay, but don't forget them. So yes, don't worry, we'll be talking cost, but before that, and you will see at the end why I'm so carefully going step by step, you are actually going to fall off your seats, and before you risk injuring yourself in excitement, I want you to be aware of a few more things. Can you see how much more you can reach with similar efforts you are already investing with your team and without giving everyone another headache? So in terms of how to communicate, let's get back to why doing webinars work so well. There is a good question to ponder, except if you don't understand what you're working with. And it's hard to get excited and to use it. But really, webinars, which are presentations on demand, wherever you want it to be seen, are the second most powerful medium for education today, not just for us non-profit, but you've heard that people want to get educated, they want to know more stuff, and they're going to go online to find the response to their questions. So the first one is, of course, to be live in person, like nose to nose or toes to toes. But really, as we said a little bit earlier, it's getting harder to scale, right? So that is why I really encourage you, and I show you also in our program, how to craft and to use webinars, because you are going to be so much more powerful when you start using them. So the second thing that I want to bring to your attention is that in all your audience is not created equal. Okay, it's not because somebody is interested in what you have to say that they will respond in the same way. Actually, there is a ratio, and this ratio is that roughly 20% of people that hear about you are going to take an action like the one that you want them to take. So out of 100%, you will get really 20%, 2 out of 10, who are really going to do something very useful for themselves and your nonprofit. So what does it mean? Well, it's, again, you have an incredible lever towards more and more efficiency. Even when you have a small team of 2, 3, or 4 people, grabbing anything that can move the needle in factor of more results for less work is usually hyper important, right? So let me go back on that small nugget so that this little known productivity hack will turn each member of your team into gold medalist. So I don't know if you know, but it's incredibly powerful if you understand that this 20% story. You don't have to reach out to 100% of people. Every time you can narrow it down to the most active, the most correctly targeted members of your audience, then the more efficient your team can become. Okay, let's think about that again. The more you learn to use presentations or webinars, the more you connect with active future members, donors, volunteers, so it is very efficient without creating more work for you and your team, then you are going to be on the winning side. I would like to welcome you in Pareto land. Well, what I've been talking about is actually called the Pareto principle. And it makes a lot of sense for you to consider it whenever in everything you do, not just in our work in nonprofit, as I say. It doesn't just apply to webinar, but it's happening for you in your daily activities. All the people that we meet fall into 2 categories roughly, right? We have the listeners and the actives. And I'm talking about people who are already interested in what we're doing, right? So there are people who listen and there are people who do. Our members, we know that there are people who are going to be hanging around because they just like to be hanging around, and then there are people who are going to, snatch the trowel out of your hand and start building the wall. Right? These are the people that you want to bring into your membership more and more. Right? You have a large mass of followers, but only a few of them are active and actually making things happen. In your communication, even the way you operate and plan on a daily basis and the way you build the use of your resources, when you take this into account, you have miracles of productivities which are taking place. All right, let's do a little experiment here. You guys are ready? Yeah? You got a pen and paper? Right. I want you to sit back for a moment and think of your typical day. For all but a few of us who are trained in lean management or Six Sigma, the day is about 80% trying to insert here whatever it is that you think you're trying to do. And then when we're lucky, 20% of the time is spent in actual productive activity. It's not just you and me, it's more like currently universal phenomenon. So we typically spend 80% of our efforts, which will go nowhere, and then a minute fraction that will achieve the results we can show. Remember when I talked about constantly refining your targets to get better results? Well, this obviously is to be taken into account because your efficiency depends on the speed and ease of implementation to reach your goals with a minimum amount of efforts. Right, let's think about human resources, but of course financial resources or any other resources for the maximum effects. Bottom line, when you identify what makes big dents towards your goals, you can then ditch the rest. Okay, and just think about it. When you've got this 80% ditch, go back to your 20% and reapply. So you get 20% of the 80% to be ditched away. You end up working a 4-hour week. I know somebody else did that before and it worked. All right. So even with a tiny team of 2, 3, or 4 people, you are the leaders in your fields. You're crucial stopping points that prevents all of us from falling into even worse state of affairs. And therefore, I just would like to just say it. We have tremendous responsibility to sprout result and initiate similar vocations, okay? We're not doing this just because we enjoy doing it, but we're also responsible because we happen to be in the small minority who is currently aware that something is going pear-shaped and we're trying to fix it, okay? So let's make sure that we're fixing it with the best possible tools. So that was a little side idea, and I hope it will be of great benefit to you. So just make sure that you're going to finish off this exercise when you come off the call, because analyze precisely what you do during your day over several days, okay? What do you do that has zero effect on the final outcome except increase your irritability? What do you and your team do, or often doesn't do, which creates a bulk of your result? Because sometimes not doing actually makes more than doing, okay? So if that was exciting for you, you're in the right place, because now is my challenge. I've spent a lot of hours getting frameworks that hit their targets in place, and my challenge was to think about how can I best give them to you so you can use them easily and quickly without getting through all the knots and crannies that I had to go through and you know, all the trials and errors that I had to go through. Well, as you know, you will have the opportunity to learn more about all these at the end of the presentation. And not to forget, get the cheat sheet that I've mentioned a couple of times my team and I use. But right now, there are a few things you can jot down to use as soon as you get off the call. And that's the format we're using to create those live calls. Without a right format, then this really, really great system of one-to-many, it's simple, but it has to be put in place. So what does it mean, one-to-many? It means that you are the presenter, or a member of your team is a presenter, so you're one, but you are able to affect a lot of people on the other side. So that's why it's called one-to-many, okay? And here's how to do it. So first, you have to organize and to craft a really engaging, a bit out-of-the-box introduction to catch your audience attention. Also, bear in mind, though, that it must really be in tune with your subject. So having clear goals defined for both you and your nonprofit, and being able to express them well, it makes all the difference between a garbled message, because you're the only one who understands what you're talking about, and a clear, crisp invite to the rest of us to join your world, okay? It is followed by your content. That is, what do you want people to do during or just after listening to you? They want to become something, they want to give ideas, you want them to give goods, you want them to give time, you want them to share expertise, you want them to send money. Whatever it is, the content that you are putting together at the core of your presentation must lead them naturally to the call to action that you're going to have at the end, okay? It must take into account exactly what you need, but also explain how you came to expressing this need, okay? Because they don't know the story once more. Example, we are helping a community rebuild after floods, and we understand we need experts to help us relocate the village out of harm's way, right? As an example. So we need to have wildlife experts that will help us reintroduce species which have been displaced. or we need to restore wetlands. We need to have people who know how to bring beavers back. Whatever it is, your content is explaining why you're going to be asking somebody or something very specific at the end of your presentation. So right now, we have this, and that, so that's what you're saying, okay? So you will say, right now we have this and that, and at this point we need X at such and such a time, Y at this time, and Z when all of this is done in about 4 months from now. So people then can follow you and think, well, okay, I can't be in the first one, or I can help on the second, or no, right now I can't, but in 4 months, yeah, I'm all in. You see, so you are actually sharing your way of thinking with your audience. You organize to shine, okay? You could, like me, tell them to download your timetable in that particular case, so they know when they can jump into action and keep contact with them, encourage feedback, and so on, okay? This leads you towards a transition period, okay, where they know you're going to ask something, and they also know what, because you've already told them, okay? But because you've also explained the whole course of what's going on, they knew that you were going to ask them for something. They knew what they're going to get in return. And we spoke about this earlier on the fact that they already have a satisfaction or a scratching of their itch that they can see visibly. So giving you whatever it is that you're asking for is a natural follow-up, right? The move is natural, it's logical, it's expected even. Which brings us to what we call closing. Closing is easy because if they're still there at that point, it shows your message resonated with them, and they're going to get some pleasures in helping you in a way or another. For example, when I speak to you a bit later about this program we put together, I have already given you all the steps which brought us to realize such a program was absolutely needed for us to move ahead much faster, much stronger. So it comes at no surprise, and you are actually unconsciously expecting to see what it looks like and whether it still really makes sense for your situation. But you're no longer in the situation of being surprised by something new and out of the blues. And this is what you must also achieve with your audience. You know, you have to be clear and transparent. You have to explain the issues. You have to tell what the solutions are. Ask if somebody can think of something else, and because that can become a separate offer as well. But then they know how much crucial material you need, what the cost of it is, who is required to use them, etc., etc. Okay, so it's just like in life when you hold a conversation with a small group of people, your team, for example, and you go through the step to get to your goal. So you are able to manage much larger projects than bigger teams. Those bigger teams would drown when you actually are shining, okay? Because you have followed very logical, well-proven steps, and you are in sync with your audience, even though you are not that big in numbers, but you're big in organization. So you will be able to do that with a much larger amount of people, even than the big teams. And the people you speak to are already very motivated because of all the prep got into choosing them and inviting them correctly. So can you see how even a small team can use this method and be dangerously efficient? Now, would you agree with me that too many presentations, including webinar introductions, leave a lot to be desired? They start out slow, they're tedious, people tell you about their lives for about half an hour, and they get only worse, which is sad because you only get one chance to make a first good impression. In your first 5 minutes of what you communicate, it can either dazzle people, or it can really not at all inspire them, or even worse, it can annoy them. And either you reach your goals in a jiffy, or it costs you all the money and efforts you invested in it. So you really have to be careful how you introduce your topic. As an attendee, you could probably agree that most of the webinars that you come to are not exactly done with a flow. When we go in depth in Module 4 of the program about how to craft and deliver your message, I will actually explain even more in details how to do that, following simple templates that always work and that you just have to adapt to whatever it is that you're doing in your nonprofit and what goal of the campaign is. Now, if possible, I'd like to show and tell, so that I want to show you actually how I achieved authority in the introduction that you just saw, and why I did this introduction. For example, I showed you personal results, right? And I did it very quickly. I also created positioning, work that we are doing, like with John, and changes that we're creating, how the changes are affecting his nonprofit, and how it can reach for bigger goals straight away. For your nonprofit, you could take an example of works that you've done or projects that you've conducted. And yeah, I know, today was a common objection of, well, we're new and we don't have newsworthy result yet, blah, blah. Then there is a simple answer. And that simple answer is to show what similar structures as yours have been able to deliver, okay, what they've been able to achieve, and say, this is what you too want to achieve. All right? So you don't have to rely on something that you've already achieved, but you say, this is what we're aiming for. Here is how other people have done it. And with your help, this is what we're going to do as well. Okay? So you are inducting your audience into the success that they are awaiting. Okay? Many of you may also have celebrities among your supporters, and this is where you would introduce them to establish your own authority as well. Okay, it's not just authority, by the way. I also did the following. How did I create commitment? Do you remember? Well, when I said, here's what I need from you, most people explain things in public, whether on webinar or real life. They just tend to talk. They talk to themselves and listen only to the sound of their own voice. But if you invite people from the word go to say, hey guys, here's what I found, but if you want similar result, you got to get involved. Then you change everything from the word go, okay? If you have a message that's going to change the world, which you obviously do, otherwise you wouldn't be doing what you're doing, then connecting with a maximum of vision, empathy, and clarity is really what you need. So it's got to be fascinated. It's got to be totally suited, as well as coherent and logical. And finally, you need to tell them exactly what you want them to do, okay? Whether it's explaining what you do, what result you achieve, how it changes lives or environment. Don't just think about features. Think in terms of the result of your action. Think about unwrapping the benefits of what you do. It's not like we are doing X, Y, Z, okay? It's what we are doing has this amazing benefit for the population, for the environment, and so on and so forth. So you're not selling how you're doing it, you're selling what you're achieving. Do you get the difference? Okay. Do you remember that? Do you remember what I spoke about with John at the beginning? Well, using well-known example, we are moving from looking to give fishes to reminding them how to fish. Okay, so we are no longer saying to them, we are bringing food into the village. We are saying, here is how to get food into the village independently and without being dependent on external help. Most of our ills and woes come from breaking everything into bits, which no longer form a coherent whole. If you were to advertise for a builder in their campaign, they would have a classroom, all right? But they still wouldn't be able to create rooms, classrooms or otherwise, without being led by the hand and given foreign aid, foreign materials, and so keeping them dependent from the non-profit or foreign assistance. Now think of filling this need otherwise, such as getting someone who can help them remember how their forefathers were adapting to their environment, using local materials, and just helping to get this collective consciousness come back to the fore. There's nothing wrong to add a few ideas from other similar areas, hence the need to connect with similar types of non-profit, even if it's in a different part of the world, because they found things which worked really well. But it's not a matter of replacing the local drive, right? So now we have a community that comes back to be able to take care of themselves, of their housing needs, building needs of any kind, as a matter of fact, because when you learn how to put a wall up, it doesn't matter what the wall is supporting, right? How much more satisfying to know that you're contributing to reviving a forgotten skill leading back to independence than to give a few dollars to buy bricks and mortar that are absolutely ill-suited to the local environment and contribute to its destruction, whilst you're on the other hand trying to fix another issue, okay? So we're changing their descriptions from building schoolrooms, finding teachers, and teaching how to grow food to we are fixing broken communities, local communities, which were traditionally self-sufficient, but for reason XYZ, they have lost the ability to take care of themselves. So this goes the same with food self-sufficiency. And so the great advantage is whatever is being thrown at those communities, they are slowly relearning the habit of finding solutions in their past, finding solutions in their environment. And when it comes down to things like wild variation in climate, it's imperative to get back to ancestral knowledge of what to grow and how, whilst having facilitators who are well versed, say, in permaculture, to let them recreate local ecosystem vital to flora and fauna, regeneration, and includes waste management, recycling, energy generation, or tackling pollution, whilst bringing attention to all members of the community. So by giving clear CTA, you get a totally different caliber of people who then come out and help in your project. It's vastly different from the kind of people that you get and the way in which you express the mission if you were to break it down in just the feature, okay? You are repositioning your mission, and now you're able to articulate it with very highly efficient tools. So right at the onset, you got to grip with your audience, you got to make them sit up on the edge of their seats, full of their seats if need be, but make sure you get them to pay attention, because what you're saying is not the usual ronron, and it is imperative if they're going to benefit and participate in what you have to offer. It's imperative that they connect from the heart. And this is exactly what I got you to commit at the beginning, right? That you'd be using what you learned today and build on those ha-ha moments that are born from what we are sharing. And guess what? Vision do that. Clarity does this. Confidence does this. I also did other things which got the rapport going, less visible but not less effective, like handling objections I know come about because I know my subject from inside out, the same as you know your subject from inside out. So you were, from the word go, all ears and ready to take action, ready to ask to clarify questions, ready to hear what global solutions can deliver all the points we've already earmarked, right? By the way, do you remember how I told you we just do that? Give you confidence when there is uncertainty, clarity when there is confusion, and confidence when there is none. Okay, that in the terms of a larger vision. When you heard those words, it may not have excited you at the outright, but now that you've learned and heard all of what comes before, you get kind of pumped up by getting the bigger picture. It's the same way as this is a way you need to learn to speak to all the people you want to engage in whatever capacity, because your nonprofit, my nonprofits, my clients' nonprofits, they all rely on the help and support others bring. And they do so when you're not only fired up from the inside in your own corner and nobody knows about you, but you have learned to list all your inner limitations. You have learned to create long-term goals. You've learned to break them down in doable, bite-sized, and you've learned that you need to communicate with the right people and the right number of people to have the desired outcome. And once you're there, well, you are moving from doing when you have the means to getting the means to do what you need. All right? You're no longer waiting to be able to. You are creating what you need. The world has turned upside down, and you have become its hero. If I didn't show you the bigger picture, if you don't give somebody hope with a future, I don't care what you do in the present, they're not going to see beyond their current situation of limitation. And this is why in the introduction and in the presentation, we have to foster hope for a better future. This is part of expressing the mission, expressing the message, expressing your passion in a way that can be shared by other human beings. How do you achieve that in presenting your mission, your project for which you are looking for specific help? Well, by using a framework. And that framework fits around your visions and your needs. Okay? So great results can be achieved by using what currently works in the world. I mean, the idea of reinventing the wheel is not really very useful. If something is working, let's use it. People are wired up in certain ways. And even if we know those ways are not always the best, we need to speak to them to help them see something different, something better, something more sustainable. Isn't it a lot easier when you have a target to aim for and to hit that target? There is a lot more I can share with you when we start to work together. A lot more that becomes clear as we dig into the psychology of how you view your future and how your team feels confident and is ready to explode in their work, come up with outstanding solutions, and generally concentrate on the 20% of the work that they see really generating 80% of your result. Okay, so when we tackle what we tackle as a basis of your mission and how best to articulate it for your overall vision, but also for the specific requirement that we identify on the way. You can think of it as a map, all right? You want to reach the Rockies, but you need to define where in the Rockies. And knowing where you are on your map is also crucial. Where are you starting from? What resources you know of do you have at your disposal? What hidden resources do you have that you've never thought of? What are the obstacles you think you have to reach your destination? I don't say the obstacles you have, but you think you have. How do we translate them in terms of resources needed? Human, physical, monetary, but also, as we keep on saying, communication. What stopover does it define on your map? Who is in charge of what specific stretches on that journey? Who can you leverage the work, the expertise, the resources of, and mutually benefit from each other's synergetic action? So then we have stopovers. Think of them as your campaigns and the real quick look I gave you in how to handle them. Now, we're missing two things. A way to fund the campaigns, that is not a campaigns, to fund the campaigns, that starts the campaigns. Well, you know what I mean by that. I mean, any kind of guidance to use the funding wisely once you've got it, which is not to fund the campaign. So we need campaign funds which we can use for real campaigns, and we need to be able to optimize them the best way possible. Now, what you need once you have clear steps to bring a specific public for a specific outcome, what you need when your message is clear, confident, inviting, it rings the right bells and triggers the right happiness feelings in your audience, that's really a way to pass this message on. Quickly, without fuss, but with great precision, and the ability to keep your finger on the pulse so that each campaign that you are making is optimized to its fullest extent. Yes, because it's not just a matter of making a campaign out in the world. It's not like birthing something and then just it will grow on its own. When you birth a campaign, it's a trial, and it's nearly a trial and error. You do the best you can, But if you don't spend time to optimize it, then you're leaving an awful lot on the table, because it's a dynamic process. And either you have someone in-house who can do that, but then I guess you would not be listening to me that far, or you need someone to teach one of your staff members how to do that, or you need to hire an external agency to handle that part of it for you with a keen eye on the ROI. So you have campaign trails, you have funding, you need to look after the ROI, but you don't need to really kind of panic because you think you don't have money. I still got the best for the end. Wait. It brings me to another point, which is really not a matter of how much you spend. It's not like you spend 1 or 10, but how much this 1 or 10 brings back to you in terms of the needs you have. It's called a return on investment, but sometimes it's hard to see the wood for the trees, especially when one is constantly struggling to get projects off the ground and above the waterline. Giving one without pain can be a heartbreaking experience. Let me give you an example how to put things back into perspective. Imagine a slot machine where every time you put $1, you get $3 out. How many times would you put a dollar coin in? Yeah, me too, all day, every day. And imagine that even if the machine was to break down, someone gave you a nice, big, high pile of dollars to put into the machine. Not just 1 or 2, but several thousand, each and every month. Would you still hesitate to put in the work to see how much such slot machine you could feed your thousands of dollars into and pick out the one that performs ever better? I hear you no, unless you're not in your right mind, right? Now, imagine that you knew of the existence of such slot machines, but they were in a district a little removed from where you're based. Not unreachable, but you have to take the car or the planes to get to the spot where your friends are already spending their time inserting their $1 and picking out the $3 or more dollar at the exit. Tell me, how quickly would you be on that plane? Let's push the fun a little further. What if you could find someone to go and put those dollars into the slot machine for you, whilst you get the $3 back in your office without moving from your chair? People whose knowledge of the slot machine make them pick those who chuck out the biggest amount of dollars back and keep an ear on the ground to make sure they are always on the winners. I don't know about you, but I certainly would both train a member of my staff to learn the tricks these people have, or I would keep sending them to the slot machine, which is exactly what we have done. Okay, it's an addiction. It really becomes an addiction, but it's a good one. It's all good. Well, there is an opportunity here which just does that. You know, you kept asking about cost in the chat box. Well, here we go. So now I want to talk to you about this opportunity, providing you're prepared to take a trip there yourself, train someone to take this trip, or get someone to go on for you. Amazingly, it's worth money most of us would never, ever dream to have access to on a regular monthly basis. Just hand it over to your nonprofit to get it better known and launch totally free of charge, FOC, the campaigns we were discussing up to now. Let's do a quick poll here. How much do you have at your disposal when you want to do something? Say, get volunteers or get a crucial piece of equipment for the office or site you're working on. It could be hire an expert or add a member of staff to your payroll, for which, of course, you need to have more members whose contribution will pay for the new staff member. Okay, so how much do you have at your disposal every month? Let's see, 1,000? 5,000, 10,000. Okay, 500, none, 3,000. Okay, so I don't see a lot of people telling me even 10,000. Okay, and is it one time? Is it several times a month? Is it several times a year? Okay, here we go. Here's something really, really cool. We can hook your nonprofit with sit-down $10,000 per month. Yes, each and every month you have $10,000 to bring to your slot machine and get the specific outcomes you are so much in need of to grow and really unleash your vision. Now, it's not just 1 or 2 months, it's literally 12 months of the year. So this is not a joke. If you don't believe me, listen to what those who took the trip to the slot machine explained afterwards. Here's what they say, and they're getting involved when they're getting involved in picking up this help. Okay, it's helped me drive in excess of 350,000 visitors to our site. And by the way, 5,000 more donations to the tune of a whisker under 500,000. Fluke? No, here's another one. It has tripled our site traffic and helped us target our help much more specifically. And that came from an animal-based non-profit. Okay, you want another one? We saw over 50,000 new people visiting our site this year. That was a science and tech non-profit. Whilst another noted that they moved from 1,000 hits a month to over, sit down, 80,000. Okay, by the way, these testimonials come from Google pages directly, so they are absolutely real and current. Okay, nothing's been invented here, and this is things that people are experiencing. So where does this money come from, and how can you use it? Well, it's a Google initiative, strangely little known from our industry. So while it's working and it doesn't seem to have a sell-by date, I strongly encourage each one of us to apply for the grant, just in case. Let's get it and let's use it whilst it's available. As a grant, well, obviously you don't have to return anything, right? The constraint there is a few constraints, okay? That it is used to blast your message via, let's guess, Google Ads, right? Which means that you are a bona fide non-profit and you know how to get registered for these grants and you know how to really take advantage of this free money, because there's a little snag. Google is asking to see some measurable results from your efforts. Guess why I have been spending all this time explaining to you how to optimize the result of whatever it is that you are undertaking. Again, it's not rocket science, but you really need to know what's needed and how to set it up, which is what we show you in module 1 and 2 of the program. So here's the first present I have for you today. It's just 10,000 per month for the year. Okay? Right. No, it's not a joke. No. You can go and have a look at it yourself. It's not a joke. I can see some people kind of making some strange comments in the chat box, but it is actually so. So you can take it anytime and run with it as fast as you can. Just be a bit careful. There are a few things you need to do correctly. At least you don't want to lose access to it, like having minimum amount of positive feedback or results with your campaigns. And this is why I spent a long time talking to you about what you need to take into consideration to make sure you do have the best result. And you don't lose your privilege of those $10,000 each and every month for 12 months, which, by the way, is, thank you, Robert, $120,000 per year. Okay, $120,000 per year. How many people do you have making you a check for $120,000 per year, which then breeds $3, $4, $5 more when you use them widely? Okay. This is especially true if you have a big team in place with really up-to-date marketing knowledge. In the PDF, you will, in the cheat sheet that you will have access to in a minute, I'll tell you exactly where to get started, and off you go. I'd love to hear from you what you're doing with it and how well you're doing with it. That's the only thing that I would love to hear from you if you want to take it and run with it. Okay, I think you've got a lot of information in what I've already given you. I hope it's been very useful. So you are able to go and do that. Okay, but if you have a smaller team at present and everyone is already stretched or has outdated marketing knowledge, you may want to tag along and take advantage of our help to set up your account, as well as creating your campaign strategy aligned with the goals we review together and the timing you want to see them happening. But I think you have another long-term benefit, that is of having understood how much more efficient you can be in planning, targeting, and reaching your intermediary goals. When we see not only the tremendous opportunities that those 10,000 per month or 100,000 per year represents for any of our structures, I guess you will also see how careful you will have to be to initially retain the privilege, but not just that. By getting someone at your side that is well used to both working with large audiences and non-profit, well, you cut to the chase, right? You take advantage of the famous 20% we talked a bit earlier. Your team learns what to do and what not to do, whilst the targets are being closely identified and the contents and funnels are being created, because you need to do that, right? This makes the whole affair fast and efficient, and with a learning curve for your team to take over as quickly as possible, or you can keep our support for as many months as you need. Okay, before I go any further, how was it for you so far? Have you learned anything useful? Is your head bubbling with ideas for implementation? Have I kept my side of the promise to give you real value that you can use with your team? I mean, if 120,000 per year is not enough, well, sorry, I can't help, But I think this could... Yes, Dina. I think it's not bad, right? Okay, where can you get it? Okay, just a second. You all want to know where you can go and get this. So as I said, there are actually 3 ways. Yeah, just a second, we're getting there. So as I said, there are actually 3 ways in which I can help you latch onto this amazing opportunity to get 10,000 a month of free digital advertising. And one of these first option is to take part in our program. I think I mentioned it a couple of times when I was explaining things to you, and I was giving you general ideas, and I was saying to you, well, we can go more in depth with this, and you can learn how to use it step by step. So in the first option, you get an optimized Google Grants program. It's a 5-module program to help you redefine create your next 12 months campaign strategy, your content, and scheduling dollars worth $5,000. Because as you have seen, it saves you from costly and potentially lethal removal from the program without having to hire an expensive firm to get going. So read here. Let's go through it. What exactly is in the program we've created for you? Okay, it's got 5 modules, step by step. Module 1 is taking stock. We're reviewing your non-profit resources. What do you have at your disposal? We're reviewing your non-profit goals. We're also reviewing your non-profit needs and what is holding you back from further expansion. Who could be your natural partners? When I was talking about helping each other and leveraging each other's strengths. Okay, this is what I call taking stocks, because that's where most of the time people have resources in the background that they're forgetting to be using. Then module 2 is what are exactly Google Grants and how to use them. So the first part is qualifying for Google Grants. How to register to get your Google key, what to do once Google recognizes your nonprofit, and then there is a checklist for registration and compliance that you need to go through to make sure that you are all okay to ask for the 10 grand. Then in module 3, we're working out the prerequisites. Okay, so in order to qualify for this grant, Google is looking at certain indicators. The first one is to take care in updating your site, and there are specific guidelines that we need to make sure you have. We have to set up communication channels that keeps your nonprofit in the public eyes. There is emails, there's direct mail, there's social media, and all of this has got to be organized with a small team. It's really like being present everywhere. Then we have how to break your yearly objective into monthly and weekly campaigns goals. whilst keeping to the terms of the grant. So you will see that when you access this grant, there is a specific way in which Google wants you to utilize it. So we can't just do any kind of campaign at any time whenever we want. We have to really make sure that we adhere to whatever it is that they want of us, so that we reach our goals. So we break these goals according to the constraint that we have. And they're not enormous constraint, because actually they have been thought about in order to maximize the exposures that we have to the public. Then, according to these objectives that we have broken down in monthly, weekly campaigns, we're defining the audiences you need to reach with each one of them, right? And then we're boosting our overall presence, return on investment, using the Pareto principle. Then in module 4, it's all about placing winning ads. I mean, it has to be kind of learned. You can't just create a campaign out of the clear blue sky without any support, any help, without any experience. So to have a winning ad, as we saw before, we need to have goal. We need to have creatives. That is to say, we need to have documents, graphics, text, pictures, whatever it is. We need to have something which is going to be going through the whole campaign. And then we need to master a little bit of tech. I know it's pretty boring, but we spoke about it with email lists, with direct marketing, with webinars, with checking out the data of your result, and so on and so forth. So this is numbers and data that you need to be keeping a strong eye on. And there are actually four pieces of data that you need to master. And we show you exactly what they are and how to make sure that you're hitting the targets each time. And then we optimize, because once you've got something that works, all you need to do is rinse and repeat, and just pick up the best and rinse and repeat, okay? And in so doing, your team will need help in some place. And we identify where exactly your team needs help. Is it in creating the goals? Is it in creating the creatives? Do you need help with tech? Have you got trouble mastering your data? Can you optimize better, and so on and so forth? So you will grow with your team. Whenever you know that there is a need, go and plug it before it becomes a problem. Because you have to prepare for growth. You know, people think that growing is wonderful. Yes, it is, but there is what's called a growing pain which goes with it. You know, there's a lot of ordinary companies that literally trip themselves over because they're growing too fast. And they're growing too fast. They get cash flow problems, they get staff problems, they get company ideals, visions problems, because they are not prepared for it. So we want to make sure that you are prepared for growth. And this is probably where my experience as an international consulting company can be helping you the most, because it will tell you why it is vital to prepare for growth, okay? And you will, when you grow, you need to really update your vision board, and you need to make sure that everybody on your team and everything that is passing through your message is creating, shared, communicating your vision board. So your vision is something that you need to keep updated. It's not changing, but it's refined. It's refining, and it's part of preparing for growth. And it's mapping your needs also. You know, in human resources, you're going to need more people because you're going to have more members, because you're going to have more projects, because you're going to have more means to do that. You're going to have to get more materials. You're going to get future campaigns. So all your needs as you grow along and you're reaching your targets have to be prepared and be there when you're going to need them. And on top of it, you know, I will give you two bonuses. One is about improving your productivity and sharpening your focus. So this is a little program that I have, for my ordinary clients, but I think it can really, really serve us, because in a team for nonprofits, we are far less, we're not necessarily professionals, and we're learning on the job. When we get a little bit of help to not just fall into every pothole that's in front of us, and it's going to be an awful lot easier and an awful lot nicer. That's why I'm going to give you that improving your productivity and sharpening your focus programs that I have. And then working with your recipient target to optimize your actions. I don't know if you remember, but I mentioned it briefly during the talk, and that was all about taking in consideration how the people that you are helping, or how other people who are taking care of an environment you're dealing with, are actually expressing the needs they feel they have. Okay, and for doing that, you need questionnaires, and I will help you to set up a specific amount of questionnaires, give you templates that you can use, and then you can run those quizzes before you prepare your campaign. So it gives you a much greater impact, as we mentioned it before. So let's go back to offer number 1. So we had the 5 modules, and we just explained what's in the 5 modules. And then we help you to set your account and get accepted by Google, because sometimes it can be a little bit tricky. So we're going to be here behind you to help you set your account. And you will understand what is needed to keep your Google's grants privileges. Because it's not just a matter of getting them, it's a matter of keeping them. I mean, there is 120,000 on the line, so it makes sense to just be fully aware of what could trip you over. And then we spend an hour with you to review how to define exactly your goals so that you can work out what campaigns you need. All right. So I know it can be extremely confusing. It can be overwhelming. It's suddenly you're taking everything in your strides. There's a lot of new things. Your team is a little bit kind of overwhelmed. So we get that. And we're going to sit down with you 1 hour, and you're going to have questions prepared for us and an idea of what plan you want to follow. Tell us about your goals. And as much as possible, we will help you to refine whatever it is that you've come up with. Okay. Actually, if we were to use all these things separately, it's a combined value of 3,500. Well, of course, you know, I'm going to make you a much better offer at the end, but I want you to be aware that this is a lot of time that we're spending, and therefore another thing that you have to be aware of is that there is not an unlimited amount of spaces, because we're not a big team, and we really want to be helping only people who are going to be moving, who are going to be action takers, not people that you have to drag along. So if you are the kind that wants to be dragged along, sorry, we can't help you. However, if you want, and you want to get Optimize and your Google Grants program, then we've only got 25 spaces. Once they're gone, they're gone. And it's not a marketing ploy, you know, and it gets even worse with the other options that I have for you. But it's simply the fact that we don't have any more time. Okay. The second option that I have for you is let me also help you set things up. What does it mean? Well, you get the program to learn how to improve your goals and visibility, like in the previous one. We help you set up your account, like previously. We help you define exactly where your goals are and how to best achieve them. And we help you set a timetable for the next 12 months with campaign goals and criteria to meet, so you don't have to guess. All right. So it's not just spending an hour with you. It could be, you know, a lot more hours that we are helping you along with as long as you need in order to define your timetable, so that when you start launching your campaigns, you actually know, I think you may remember what I said in the presentations, it's not one campaign that matters. It's the series of campaigns that covers all your goals. That's why you need a timetable. And luckily, Google gets this, which is the reason why it is giving us support for 12 months in a row. All right. So we need to be really, really keen on and clear on what we want to do. And for this program, because of the extent of hours that is involved, we have far less number of slots. I have actually 8 slots available for this program. And again, once they're gone, because my team is not gone any bigger since I presented the first program, and we are doing lots of other things. So We want to help, but there is a limit to the number of people that we can help. And according to the amount of time that we're going to spend with you, it's actually a $5,000 value. It's not something that we've plucked out of thin air. It's actually adding up the amount of time that we're spending and the amount of resources that we're putting aside. So even for nonprofits, it's a lot of money. But again, it might not necessarily be the thing that you are going to be paying, as you will see at the end. But remember, one thing is important: 25 slots for the first one, 8 slots for the second one. And it gets better or worse, as the case may be. We have the same thing that in the second offer, but then we thought maybe you need a little bit more help. Maybe you need to have the same program as before. We help you set up your account. We help you define exactly where your goals are and how to achieve them. We help you to set up a timetable for the next 12 months. We help you run the first months of ads. I repeat this. Did you get this? We help you run the first months of ads. That is to say, you are not on your own. You have experts with you who are used to dealing with Google Ads and can help you not make the rookie mistakes that we all make when we first start running ads. And we do this for the first months with you. And not only that, we help you analyze the first results and to adjust the following campaigns that you have. So you have us as an agency by your side for the first months, as well as whatever happens in the other two. But there is a but, and the but is I've only got 5 slots. It's an awful lot of work, and my team's going to be overstretched, and I don't want that to happen. So I want to take the time with you, because I know how long it takes to set up accounts and to set you up for a real campaign, and making sure it works and showing you all the details, stopping you where you're going to be making mistakes and showing you why, and finally helping you to analyze the results that you're getting compared to the goals that you were having. Okay, so there is really only 5 slots. When they're gone, they're gone. And I think you get me. It's not a marketing ploy, it's just a logical thing. So this has an $8,500 value. It's probably even more, because our team is going to spend a long time with yours, and it's not something that you can, just happen as we go along. So let's go back and recap offer 1. All right, I know it's a lot to take in. Take your time. You'll have this on the page. We've been trying to think through, what is it that's been helping us? What is it that we wish we'd had, when we launched into this, when we started to help clients, when we started to do this with ourselves? What is it that we would have needed to have to save us a lot of time? And that's exactly why I created this these programs in such a way, because I have been looking at what we needed and thinking about, okay, we aren't any different. We're trying to do something similar, right? So we needed to take stock, okay? We need to understand exactly what these Google grants are. It took us several weeks, and we're not supposed to be that stupid. And there is differences also from country to country. You have to apply to different people who are intermediaries between you and Google grants. But we will show you how to do that, and then we'll show you how to use them. Then we have working on the prerequisites. So I remind you, it's anything to do with your sites, with the way Google wants you to be set up. And it's also everything to do with being omnipresent, because if you are not visible everywhere at the time where your campaigns are running, then you are again leaving some money on the table. And that's not exactly what we're trying to do, is it? So then we have to learn how to place winning ads. And there's an art to it. So I jokingly called it the art of placing winning ads. But it's not a joke. There are things which have to be done and things that you really, really must avoid. So we know you are not marketing experts, and we try to put all the information, like some of the informations I've given you during these presentations, but we're going into much more details. And then we are making sure that we are preparing your nonprofit for growth. Okay. We also help you get your account set up and accepted by Google. That took us 2.5 weeks, which really shouldn't have been that much. And you understand what is needed to keep your Google Grants privileges. You know, I keep insisting upon this, but I have had friends with nonprofits who have not really quite understood. There's one particular clause that appears to be, they appear to be very sharp on, and get this and you're going to be on the right track. So then we spend an hour with you to review how to define your goals so that you can go on and create your own campaigns, right? That's offer number 1. Offer number 2, what is it different? Well, you have module 1, module 2, Google Grants, module 3, working on the prerequisite, module 4, how to place winning ads, module 5, preparing your nonprofit for growth. We help you get your account set up. And instead of 1 hour, we delve deep into your goals, help you organize them over a 12 months period, not having to wait for the resources to do that. And we help you translate all this into your very own precise campaigns, targets, timing, making sure you have the tech set up correctly to run your ads, and optimize them when the time comes. Okay, so I don't know if you realize, but with what I mentioned earlier, there is quite a lot of bits and pieces, moving parts which need to be talking to each other nicely. So it's not too much of a difficulty if you have people who are well versed in marketing and particularly up to date with marketing. It's a little bit more complicated if you've got to start from scratch. And really having somebody helping you there is going to make an awful lot of difference. But then if you want to be really have an all-in done with you, and I wouldn't say done for you, because the idea is, although we do it for you the first months, we are actually doing it with you so that you are independent. We don't want to give you fish. We want to show you how to fish, okay? So we have the 5 modules. We help you get your account set up and accepted by Google. But instead of 1 hour, we delve into your goals. We help you organize them over a 12 months period. You don't have to wait for the resources to do that. And we help you translate all this into your very own precise campaigns with targets, timing, making sure you have the tech to run all of these ads and optimize them when the time comes. Plus, and this is where the cherry comes on the cake, we actually create and run your first months of offers and show you how to analyze and improve the results. Okay, so now that we have gone through all this, let's look at cost, because I know how complicating things are. And before you get to the 10,000 amounts, which then brings some money in the coffers, then you probably don't have that much money in your coffers. So instead of $3,500 for the program on its own, we decided to offer it to you for $1,350, which I think I'm going to let you decide, but just the hour on its own, or our hour of consulting is over $1,000. So I think you will appreciate, I think, without me doing a lot of marketing, what it means here. And for each one of you, we've tried to be as helpful as possible. So with the second program, instead of a $5,000 value, your price today is $1,600, $1,600 to have everything set up for 12 months and the opportunity to use $120,000 in the year. $1,600 versus $120,000. Okay, I'm not going to say anything. You guys decide. And then, as I said, I wish we'd had somebody to help us. Not that we are totally useless in terms of marketing, but there was an awful lot of new things for us, specifically because we were not used to doing so much with a nonprofit. So we do all this. We help you analyze the results that we get. And instead of an $8,500 value, your price is going to be $2,550. That's it. You've got us for a month for $2,550. Okay, please. So you should see a link appearing in the chat box right now to get on whilst you can. If you thought that it was something that's going to help you, then where you need to go is dareyourdream.com/GGRT. dareyourdream.com/GGRT. You're going to find the 3 options there, and you're going to be able to grab one of your spaces, because careful, there are only 25 places for offer 1. There are only 8 places available for offer 2, and there are only 5 places for offer 3. And that's for obvious reason. You know, I'm not doing any marketing here. I've just got a small team, as I keep on saying, and we want to be really close to what you're doing. So we want to take care of you correctly. And I don't want to have a mass of people that I would not be able to follow. So when you're ready, dareyourdream.com/GGRT. This offer is not going to run forever. So whenever we're getting to the end and we are, kind of closing, then this offer will disappear. And I honestly don't know. And again, this is not a marketing ploy, because we're incredibly busy, and what we are doing with our own nonprofit is growing exponentially. So I want to make sure that you understand this is I don't think you've seen this before, right? Because it doesn't really you may have had people telling you, well, go and get Google Grants, but you haven't had somebody who told you how to use them and how to optimize them. So if you think this is a really good offer, then go to dareyourdream.com/GGRT. Now, there are surely a lot of frequently asked questions. Make sure you give me all your questions. And now we're going to go through the ones that my team has picked out in the chat box. Don't worry if there is not enough time for all. I will answer after the call. I will, send you a little note, or if it's something personal, I won't talk it over loudly on the or openly on the chat. But I want to make sure that all of us have a time to ask your questions. I've seen quite a lot of questions come up during the call. I know some of them have been answered as I've carried on in the presentations, but I also want to make sure that we clear up any questions that you have. So in the meantime, go to dareyourdream.com/GGRT to make sure that you've got your spot. So just another thing, in all the marketing things, they say, well, there is a guarantee. Well, my guarantee is that we've done for you what we would have done for ourselves, and actually much better than this. We've done for you what we did for ourselves. And everything we've learned, everything that we have come together with, all the experience that we have, and I have about 40 years of marketing experience, we have condensed it into those programs. The only thing that you have to decide is, do you want to do this thing on your own, in which case you don't get the program? Do you need to have step by step, in which case you need the program? Do you need us to help you to create your 12 months campaign so you take full advantage of $120,000? I repeat, $120,000. Don't play with it. That's offer 2. And offer 3, do you think that you really need us to be with you to help you create that first line, that first months of offer? And that's a guarantee that I'm bringing. I'm not making any shenanigans about get your money back and this and the other. Either you know that you need to grow, and what I have said to you has convinced you that I have a little bit of understanding of what I'm talking about, or not, in which case, take whatever you can, whatever you want, and go and apply it, because it's still gold nuggets. So having said that, go to dareyourdream.com/GGRT. If you're not sure which one to take, then say so in the chat box, and one member of my team will get back to you and help you choose, as long as the slots are still available. Okay, so thank you very much. Let's go through the chat box. I'm going to turn to my team and make sure that we've got all your questions answered. Let's go.